into webinar number, 12. This is part of a series, our online coaching series, hosted by California Water Sport Collective. My name is Melissa DeMarie, and I am the host of the show. I'm also the founder, aka chief instigator of Cali Collective for short. For those of you that don't know, and most of you do, we have lots of regulars tuning in today. But Cali Collective is a community building organization. But yes, we do kayaking classes and trips. We just happen to use that as our medium to get people together, get people connected, build skills, confidence, and just get out on the water and have a good time with each other. I am super excited for this webinar today. This is a subject that resonates with absolutely everyone. To some degree or another, it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, everyone deals with fear in one way or another. And just like we practice our paddle strokes or our yoga poses or our dance moves, I think what you'll probably learn in this, in this talk today is that dealing with fear and managing fear is actually a practice. It's something that you can get tools for managing and dealing with, and how to take something that, it's a massive topic and a big subject. And I am just over the moon that Anna has that she's going to be tackling this one for us today. Anna Levesque is, I've used the word incomparable. She set the style that sets the standard. She was the founder of Girls at Play. She's the owner of Mind Body Paddle. She's a wellness coach, yoga instructor, kayak instructor, SUP. She's an instructor trainer. She has been on the freestyle circuit. She's raced steep creeks. She has been around the world doing her thing, and I can't say enough amazing things about Anna. And so thank you, Anna, so much for coming back. This is Anna's second webinar with us. She did one a few weeks ago on yoga for kayakers, which, just so you know, is we do have it if you guys missed it and you want to check it out. But Anna, thank you so much. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. I really appreciate you putting this together, this series. It's awesome. And yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much. And thanks to everyone who's here. Yeah, I appreciate all of you showing up, taking some time out of your evening. So I'll just launch in here. All right. So I myself, I love the topic of fear, and fear and courage go hand in hand, because courage is being afraid and taking action anyway. And I feel like that is a very good way to describe my kayaking and, paddle surfing as far as stand-up paddleboarding career goes. I have not always been, and I continue to work on my confidence, but I don't think of myself, or haven't, I definitely didn't start kayaking as super confident. I was super enthusiastic for sure, launching myself out there. But it's something that I work on, and it's a lifelong journey for me. And I've done a lot of work in the realms of mindset coaching for myself. Programs, yoga, Ayurveda, have all helped me. And so what I'm going to share with you tonight is 5 strategies that have really helped me out. All right, and hopefully they'll also help you out. You'll take something away with you. So first thing is, with fear or nerves, number 1 strategy, and this is on the river, this is in the ocean, this is in the middle of a pandemic, doesn't matter. Anytime you feel fear or nerves, the first thing is to accept what is. Okay, so a lot of women tell me that they want to, they'll say stuff like, well, I still have fear, or I can't get rid of the fear. It's not going away. Well, here's the truth. It's never going to go away. It's never going to go away, right? Because it just is. We are designed, our brains are designed to assess threats and opportunities. And threats are scary. Our brains are designed to keep us alive, okay? And so this idea that one day you're going to wake up and you won't have any fear is an illusion. It's just not true. And so it's really important to accept what is, to accept that fear exists, that you'll be experiencing fear and nerves and uncertainty your whole life, okay? The other thing to accept in that is that everyone is unique. So I'm an Ayurveda health coach, which is the sister science to yoga. And according to that, we each have a unique constitution, right? And when we customize our diet and lifestyle to our constitution, we experience greater health and well-being. And we also have a constitution of the mind, okay? And once we know that, we're better able to work with our minds. So there's a good example of this actually in modern science. If any of you have seen the movie Free Solo with Alex Honnold, who free soloed El Cap, in the movie, he went and had an MRI, okay, an MRI that scans the brain. And they, in that movie, they were talking about how he requires a lot more stimulus for his prefrontal cortex to, I think it's the prefrontal cortex, for his brain, the assessing threats part of the brain to activate, right? His level of tolerance for scary things essentially is higher, okay? That's the science of it. So each of us has a different makeup in our brains, and that's also important to accept. Comparing yourself to someone else and how someone else can handle something will not be empowering for you, okay? That doesn't mean you can't look at other people and be like, oh, wow, they inspire me. I want to do that someday. You know, that is awesome. What I'm saying is that if one day on the river, for instance, you are, you know, someone decides that they're going to run a rapid and you're in the same group and you decide not to, it's important to accept that. There's nothing wrong with you. They're not better than you. They're just different. There's no better or worse, right? We have to make decisions that work for us. And it's really important to accept our own fear tolerance. And once we get to know what our own fear tolerance is, then we can work with it. But when we're constantly trying to push it away, like resisting the fact that we feel fear, resisting the fact that we feel nervous, beating ourselves up, like, why am I so scared? I run this river all the time, or I paddle out in this surf all the time. What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. All of that self-talk is just going to make it worse, right? It's just a snowball effect. So instead, what I found is a good strategy is accepting, wow, I'm really nervous today. Interesting. Okay, I'm really nervous. I am feeling scared right now. Okay, and not pushing it away, and definitely not hoping that it goes away. Once you embrace it, then from that, once I am like, okay, I'm feeling nervous today, then I know, okay, well, here are my strategies, right? Here's what I can do. Whereas if I spend the time being like, why am I nervous? I can't believe I'm nervous. Oh my gosh, you know, I can't do anything right, blah, 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 which I've been there many times. I just find that it's not powerful, and it doesn't do anything to help me out in reaching my goal, which is to get down the rest of the river or paddle out into the surf or catch that wave, right? So fear is normal. Our brains are designed to assess threats. Each of us has a different brain makeup, body makeup. Get to know that and accept what is. Okay, so that's strategy number one. Don't expect the fear to go away. Strategy number two is once you accept, I know that once I accept, everything calms down a little. So then it's time to breathe. Take a deep breath. The breath is your cheapest, always available stress management tool. It's always there. You know, take advantage of it. Take a deep breath, right? Another thing you might do is say a gratitude. Wow, I'm nervous right now, and I'm so grateful that it's so beautiful out, and I get to paddle this river or this body of water, and I'm with great people. It's almost impossible for the mind to focus on fear and gratitude at the same time. You try it and then report back to me. Okay, it's once you focus on gratitude or take a deep breath, become aware of the present moment of where you are, right? So that's your pause. It's a pause, right? So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is separate fact from story. And I talk about this a lot. This has helped me out so much in my life. So I'm sure you guys have all seen this, right? FEAR, the acronym, false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. And that's where a lot of our fear comes from. Stories that we create about what's happening, not actually what's happening, right? So there's what's happening, what's right in front of you. And then there's the story that you tell yourself about what's happening. And that's also where people differ, right? Because someone might look at a 25-foot waterfall and be stoked because the story they're telling themselves about that waterfall is that it's awesome, it's going to be sick, I can't wait to do it, so fun. Someone else will look at a 25-foot waterfall and be like, that's crazy, that's dangerous, only stupid people do that kind of thing, right? Also, a story, because what a 25-foot waterfall is a 25-foot waterfall. It's a 25-foot waterfall with aeration. It's runnable or it's not. That's all. Those are the facts, right? You're looking at a waterfall. It's runnable or it's not. It has a line or it doesn't. It has a lip. It has a line that you see or you don't. And that's it. That's the fact of it. Everything else is a story you're telling yourself about that feature. Same thing with a rapid. A rapid is a river flowing down over and around rocks or obstacles, creating waves, V's, eddies, right? Everything else is a story you're telling yourself about that rapid. This is the key to personal power right here, is your ability to discern between what's actually in front of you and what's actually happening and the story that you're telling yourself. Discerning isn't so easy because the stories that we tell ourselves are the coping mechanisms that we've used all of our lives, right? That we developed as children to cope with difficult experiences, feeling loved, feeling accepted, pleasing people, getting through life, getting through trauma, whatever that is, right? The stories have helped us. They've been very helpful. So when it comes to facing fears and looking at the stories, it's important that we recognize that the stories have been helpful. And then to decide whether those stories are going to continue to be helpful. Are they helpful in this moment? And one way, and you know, so this is getting a little deep here, right? Therapy is awesome. Seeing a professional, if you really dive in and you start really seeing your stories and it's bringing stuff up, right? It's good. It's good to get help from someone who can help you work through those things. But the basis is that when you're looking at a rapid or you're in a situation, you want to discern what's right in front of you and what story. So in this pandemic, for instance, there's a lot of story. We don't even know what stories to focus on sometimes because there's so much, right? But what you know is where you're sitting right now, your health right now, right? What is happening for you right now in this moment? Even pause. What are the qualities of this moment right now? Is it safe? Or is it scary? Is it calm and peaceful? Or is there a lot of activity? Right? Is it hot or cold? Tuning into these simple qualities can help you to come into the present moment, come into right now. How does my butt feel on the chair right now? It can be stuff like that. How does my butt feel in my kayak? I seriously think about that. How do my feet feel on my stand-up paddleboard right now? Right? Finding that connection that'll bring you to the present moment of what's actually happening. Okay. And from there, once you can start discerning the story from what's actually happening, then you're able to tune into what action is actually needed in this moment. Okay. So for instance, if I'm at the top of a rapid and I'm nervous and scared, I'm like, so I accept that I'm scared, I take a deep breath, and then I look at the rapid. I look at where I am. Where do I need to go? What strokes do I need to make? Right? So this is what needs to happen. This is the fact. I need to get from here to there, right? And then what is needed from me for me to do that? And then that's what I focus on. Instead of, oh my gosh, this is so scary. I can't believe, I don't know if I can do it. Like, what if I hit that rock, blah, blah, blah. That's all story. Like, especially the what ifs. What if I do this? Well, okay, it's possible, but is it probable? That's another great question to ask yourselves. When you're discerning fact from story, and you're in your story even, oh, I could die or I could swim. Sure, it's possible. Is it probable? And I'm not saying that anything can happen, for sure, right? It's adventure sports. It's extreme sports for a reason. But that's a good question also. Is it probable? Okay. So then sorry, I skipped around there, but what is needed in the moment? Okay. So then I need to get from here to there. That's the line. And then I focus on what I need to do. What strokes I need to do, what angle does my boat need to be in, or my stand-up paddleboard, how fast do I have to paddle, right? And then number 5 is taking courageous action, right? And again, I can't say this enough. Courageous action is being afraid and doing it anyway. So courage in our culture, in some parts of our culture, or at least how I grew up, it was this idea that like vulnerability is weak, right? Being scared is weak. But the deal is you cannot take courageous action without first being scared and vulnerable, right? Vulnerability and fear are kind of key in being able to take courageous action. Like, you wouldn't be able to be courageous unless you were coming up against something, right? So that's also important to change the context of, is that vulnerability is not weak. Fear is not weak, right? That's a story. That's a story, right? That whoever believed and passed on, right? What is in reality, what's fact, is that our brains are designed to assess threats and opportunities. And our brains will assess threats. And our brains want to keep us alive and keep us safe. That's the facts, right? So yeah, the brain is going to send an alarm when there's a situation that you're coming up against that it doesn't deem to be safe. And the interesting thing is that the brain deems things, what the brain deems to be safe is what is known. So when you're actually trying to break out and do something new, like a new rapid, a new river, the brain seems to be even more active. So when you know that, actually, sometimes I think about that. Oh yeah, this is just my brain assessing a threat, right? So let's drop the story that comes from the past of how I grew up, of like how scary things I was told things are, or whatever experiences that I've had. And let's focus on what's right in front of me and what I need to do, and then take courageous action. And by the way, courageous action in whitewater kayaking can be walking a rapid. That is just as courageous as running a rapid, right? Especially if everyone else in the group is running the rapid and you decide for yourself powerfully that you don't want to run it. That's really important. Courage in whitewater kayaking does not equal running everything, right? I think that courage equals making, it takes more courage to make the decision that's right for you rather than follow the group when you know it's not what you want to do. There's something else that just jumped out at me, and I just want to see if I can get it back. It's not coming back to me, but we'll see if it comes up as I talk here. So I'll just recap my 5 strategies. 1 is accept what is, right? Accept the fear, accept that you're nervous, know that you are unique, and you get to make the choices for you. Number 2, take that pause, breathe, gratitude, affirmation, whatever you need to do to pause so that you have the clarity to discern fact from story. False evidence appearing real. Okay, so all those stories are the false evidence. And then you looking at the facts, what is needed? What is the moment asking of you right now? For instance, in this pandemic situation, what is this moment asking of you right now? I know it's asking me to be creative, right? It's asking Melissa to be creative. This wouldn't be happening, right? Had not all of this come down, right? Because I can't make my living teaching on the water like I've been doing. And so the moment is asking me to be creative in my work. And I'm finding that there's a lot of opportunity for myself and others in that, right? That's much more empowering than if I sat here and just complained about not being able to teach kayaking and worried about my lost income. You see the difference, right there? So we get to choose the context through which we look at a situation. And then you take courageous action, right? Take courageous action, being afraid and doing it anyway. So those are my 5 strategies. And I want to tell you 2 stories, 2 river stories. I was actually, you might have heard them because I've talked about them this week. But so the 2 stories, story number 1, Upper Gauley River in West Virginia, one of my favorite rivers, class 4 river, super fun, big water. Normal release is 2,500 to 3,200 CFS. And my husband, my friend Brian, and I put on one winter morning, 32 degrees at 15,000 CFS. And we were really pumped. It was huge and we were excited. And we know the river really well. I've raft guided on it. They've paddled it. We've paddled it a lot. It was overcast. Here's the story, right? Overcast, so a little scarier. Big water, cold. So we put on and we're paddling down and it's huge. And my heart is like racing. And it's good. It's good. And we get through the, the first big one, insignificant, all good, so awesome, not too many big holes, or we avoided them. And then we get to Pillow Rock, which is my favorite rapid on that river. And just at normal flows, it's big and it has big holes, and it has two huge rocks on the side sticking out that we know are covered now. So we know that there's holes. And we can't scout because you can't get close enough to it to scout. So we tried to scout from way upstream looking down. And we were like, well, we can't see much except it looks big. We know the line. We should be able to go, to the left and out. So we start going and we come down and it's huge and it's awesome. So much fun. And at the bottom, I come through great. And then I get shanked over to the left in what Brian calls a cauldron, right? Because it was behind a big rock and kind of in between the trees, like the shore. So I was kind of stuck like in a big eddy. It's hard to explain, surrounded by big rocks, like huge rocks and trees. But it was stable. It was super stable. It was big. And in front of me, I could see the slot that I needed to paddle through to get back out into the main current. But the story in my head was that this was terrifying and I might die or something might happen if I paddle through that slot. I couldn't see very well, and I got paralyzed with fear. I was stuck. And so I just waited, and I could see Brian and Andrew and they were waving me on, and I was like, I need time. I spent 10 minutes, I think. It was probably not that long, but just sitting there trying, just in fear. Brian finally paddles up and he managed to paddle around through the trees. I can't remember how he got up there. He's like, what's going on? I said, I'm just scared. I don't know how to get out. And he's like, oh yeah, you just go through this slot right here. You can follow me. And I said, is it okay? Like, I couldn't see. He's like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, okay. So we go through, and it's literally a class 2 move, like literally a class 2 move. And when I looked back, I could see that it was a class 2 move, but the story in my head made it be like crazy, and it paralyzed me. I had tunnel vision. I wasn't able to discern. Okay. And so that made it worse. And I got stuck and I wasn't able to meet the moment, right? I wasn't able to see what was in front of me and take courageous action until Brian came around. So then, second story is I'm on Mill Creek, which is another creek in West Virginia. Class 4, steep, and it's awesome. Boulder Gardens, 25-foot waterfall, beautiful. We run that. Everything's great. I'm having a great day. And it's a group of guys that I've paddled with a ton. And my friend says, okay, we're paddling down. It's Boulder Gardens. He says, this is the line. We're going to come around to the right. And yeah, there was a big flood last week, but I don't think anything's changed. I haven't really looked at it, but it should be good to go. So I come around the corner and there's like a rock that is in the middle. It's a really narrow slot and there's just no way to go. You have to come over the rock, and the rock shanks you, or shanked me, over into an undercut rock, right? So, and it was quite, like when I saw it, I was like, crap, it was very undercut. And I leaned away from the rock, which was not awesome. But that did help keep my head out of the water because my paddle was caught between the top of the rock and the bottom of the river. So I could hang on to it so I could breathe. So I'm stuck sideways, but with my head out of the water. And then another friend comes around the corner. Same thing happens because we all didn't know about it. And he gets pushed into me, hits me, and I go under the rock in my boat. And so I'm under the rock and underwater. And the realization is, okay, if I don't do something right now, I'm going to drown because I'm underwater and I can't breathe. that was fact. Like my mind went straight to fact. There was no story. There was no like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Holy crap. It was like, I have got to do something right now or I'm not coming out of this. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, this is my plan. I took my knees out, put my feet on the boat, got ready to pull the skirt. I leaned forward. I pull the skirt. Water starts coming in. I grab a hold of my cockpit, push with my feet. My head comes out and I take a breath. And then I get pulled under. And at this point, I'm like, I don't know what this undercut looks like, but I've made my choice. Like I've taken action. And luckily it was, obviously, because I'm here telling you about it, it wasn't, the water didn't push straight under it. It went around and under. So it was more of a big, deep overhang. And so then I took a swim, which I was happy about. I was super happy, actually. I was like, yes, I'm swimming and I can breathe. And got to shore and all that. So the reason I tell these two stories is that they're very different. And what's interesting is that the story that was actually where my life was actually in danger is when I could discern fact from story more quickly than the other on the river when I had lots of time to like build it up in my mind. And I found that fascinating, right? And it just goes to show, I think, at least for myself, that when we have too much time and we're overthinking things and we're letting the stories accumulate, that's when fear gets worse and it becomes overwhelming. Whereas if we can get right to separate fact from story, and you know what, when each of us is in a situation like now, actually, in this pandemic, where we have no choice, right? It's right in front of us. We've got to take action because things are changing, things are happening, right? And it's important that we rise to meet the moment. I find that actually it's a lot easier when it's so like cut and dry and intense. And you might feel that way too, I don't know. But I would rather, the idea is that instead of making myself suffer for 10 minutes in that eddy where it was a class 2 move, right? Cutting to the chase reduces the suffering. And this is really what this is all about, you guys, is reducing our suffering and spending less time on what's out of our control and spending more time on what's in our control, and spending more time taking action, because action is what creates change. Action is what gets us towards our goal. Spending time worrying or being fearful when there's nothing to be fearful or worried about right now is a waste of energy. So it's like being on a river and you're paddling down and you want to run the river. Let's say you feel it inside, like I'm gonna run this rapid, I see it, I feel it. Then it's much better, or less, you'll suffer less if you then go for it because you've made your decision, than if you continue to talk about it and resist. What we resist persists. And that's why it's important to accept what is. So those are my 5 strategies for you on working with fear. And I say with fear because I think that's the important piece. Don't resist so it doesn't persist. Can't wait to hear your questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was amazing, the story. And we get so sucked into our own stories sometimes to see, it's hard to delineate. I know sometimes for me, where it's like where the story ends and fat begins and those lines blur often. And it's nice to have tools where times that I'm in the moment and I've made, you know, especially on the river and, you know, making these quick decisions that had I been given the opportunity to think about it over time, who knows what kind of a decision I made, but in the moment when it was a black or white, yes or no, life or whatever, you can make those decisions like that. But it's nice to have some tools where you don't have to be in these dire situations to be able to take courageous action. So we're going to open up the floor to question and answer. So we already have a few in there. So we're going to start with David. I'm going to unmute you. And so for those of you that maybe this is your first time to one of our webinars, the way that the question and answer session works is you go ahead and put your question into the chat. You don't have to do a whole paragraph. You can kind of just paraphrase it. And then I'll go through and I'll call on people. And what I'll do is I'll unmute you at that time. And then sort of once you know, wrapped up chatting with Anna, you know, we just ask you to go ahead and mute yourself. So when we move on to the next person, we're not learning what you're making for dinner, you know, what your kids are saying in the background. So let me find David, and you are up.
Awesome. Thanks for a great strategy, Anna, first of all. One of the questions that I have is, I found myself at times taking the courageous action of not paddling something, especially often as the supper with a group of kayakers. And at times I felt proud of myself for making that decisions. And at other times, I sort of beat myself up, you know, wondering what the rest of the group might think about my choice to walk around something. And I'm just wondering if you have some strategies for managing the feelings or thoughts that might come up after making that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So what can you control in that situation?
Oh,
sorry.
I know. I think he got excited and muted himself. It's really funny. I feel like we really have people trained right now.
That's cool. There
you go.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Besides the decision to walk around.
Right. Absolutely. So the only thing that we can control is ourselves. So we cannot control what other people think about us. And this is something that I struggled with. When I competed in freestyle, it really hindered me in my competition. So I really understand where you're coming from. Like when I didn't do well, everyone thinks I suck. I'm a sucky kayaker, you know, and when I didn't do well, it's because I wasn't in top 3 and I beat myself up and in tears sometimes. And I look back at that and think, wow, so much time spent, right? When I can't control what other people think of me. And so all we can do is control what we ourselves and the decisions we make. And our life is unique to us, and life is a gift, and we get to choose. We get to say, and no one else is living our lives for us. And what we project onto people, like this is, you know, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I'll project onto someone, oh, they're probably thinking this, or they were really quiet, they probably don't like me, or blah, blah. You know, that's all story, pure story. Most of the time, then I'll actually check in with people, you know, and a lot of the time they're thinking about something in their lives that they're dealing with, right? And that's where the silence comes from. That's where the facial expression comes from. Our minds are going, you know, always assessing threats and opportunities. And remember, everyone's mind is doing that. So that's what I would say. Remember that you can only control yourself, and we have to let go, and we have to stand in our power in the decisions that we make. And most of the time, the people, I think all of us who at least, I think paddle whitewater, the ocean, the people, I know the people I want to paddle with are the people who are stoked with whatever decision I make for myself. And they're not concerned because they are happy for me that I'm doing what I want to do and having fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, David. Okay, next we have Marie. Marie, let me just get to you. All right, Marie, you're up.
Hey, Anna. I was just wondering if you have any advice for battling the tunnel vision that one gets in a high stakes situation, like a rescue, for example. If you're so focused on them that, you know, the number one rule is to stay out of trouble yourself, and that's hard when you're not paying attention to yourself.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Marie. So the tunnel vision comes into the one is taking a breath, taking that moment to pause, so that we create space between our thoughts, and we create space in the situation so that it's not going so fast, right? So we create, and that's where that awareness I was talking about, like in a rescue situation, how do my feet feel on the rocks right now? How does my hand feel holding this rope? This doesn't take very long to do, but it puts you in the present moment and aware of yourself. The other thing is the story. So if you have such tunnel vision to where you're, okay, so your story is that you want to be, I don't know, but a story could be, if you have only tunnel vision on the other person, is you want to be the hero. Okay. And so looking at that is good to start with, right? The people, we don't need heroes. We don't need people to fix us and save us. We need folks who are willing to guide us and to do their best. I know in a rescue, yes, there is saving involved. However, you know, a really effective leader on the water is able to see the big picture, an effective rescuer. And so letting go of whatever story you're telling yourself about how a rescue should go, right? You might have an idea, oh, I need to keep my focus on the person, and if I don't, that's bad. Like that's story of how you think it should be. If you're able to, again, pause, discern fact from story, then you see the situation for what it is, and you see what the situation is actually asking of you. So I hope did that make sense, Marie?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I feel like that's the key, that separation of fact from story.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is really easier said than done at times. But,
absolutely,
you know, at least if it's brought to the front of your consciousness instead of not realizing that that's existing, then at least we have a chance.
Yeah, totally. It's a journey. This is a lifelong journey again, right? It never goes away. And I think that when we expect things to one day, it's like miraculously be different, it doesn't work, because that's not how life works, right? It's like compounding interest, which I talked about in my Yoga for Kayaking webinar, of the consistent action over time, whether that's with your body, with your diet, with your mindset. It's this consistent action over time. We've got to keep up the work. And I don't view that as a bad thing. You know, some people get disempowered thinking about that. I find great joy in doing the consistent action over time, because it helps me out. And then I can help other people out, right? So this isn't just about us. When we take care of ourselves, our mindset, our health, whatever it is, then we're better able to be of service to others because we're healthy. We see things clearly. Yeah.
That all makes so much sense. Okay, Gail. Gail has a question for you.
Yeah.
Hello, Anna. Thank you for a really great presentation.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm sort of a newbie to whitewater, And one of the biggest fears that I know I take with me on the water is I'm afraid to embarrass myself in front of people I don't know. And then, you know, they'll judge me.
Mhm.
So what can I do, or what can I do as part of a group so that we can make the experience more nurturing, or make it so that people feel okay to try something and then make mistakes?
Mhm. Awesome question. Yeah, so having taught kayaking for almost 15 years and mainly to women, what you're expressing is the most common fear that I've heard women express in kayaking, is the fear of being the weak link, the fear of, you know, feeling embarrassed, or of making a mistake, quote unquote mistake. There's no mistakes really. Um, so, you know, it comes back also to what is it Davide? Am I saying it right?
David,
Melissa?
yeah.
David.
David.
Yeah,
Yeah.
David, great. So it's like what I was saying to David is, it comes back to the same thing. You can't control what other people think about you. And so if you're worrying about that, one, it's sucking your energy, and that's energy you could be putting towards focusing on what you need to do, what's right in front of you, and having fun and enjoying the moment. So, you know, again, it's recognizing that story, and it is a huge story, right? If you're going out with a group and you've been invited, and it's it's either a meetup or instruction or with friends, everyone in the group has agreed to be there with everyone. And so, and everyone has been a beginner. Everyone has been a beginner, and everyone has taken swims, right? And so for some reason, I feel like we as women have a tendency to think that we're the only ones, right? Like, oh, we're the only ones that will ever mess up and everyone's going to look at us, which is a story, right? And you know what? This comes to I heard the Dalai Lama. I was watching a little video of the Dalai Lama answering a question. A woman asked him how to deal with fear in the moment, and he was saying that the feeling of fear comes from self-involvement. I thought that was really interesting. And you know, if we break it down, me being worried about what someone else thinks, or being worried about being the weak link, is very self-involved, right? I'm more concerned with myself than with the group. And so it's an interesting thing, and I'm not saying that as judging any of us. It's just another way to look at it. Can we focus the energy away from us and onto the group? And I find that when people start leading or start helping others in a group, that that fear lessens, because they are focused on helping others too, as well as themselves. And all of a sudden, there's more community, there's more support. But nothing has changed. It's just that that person has taken all of the focus off of themselves and actually started focusing on, like, oh, how can I be with this group? And a lot of times, that's another key too, is actually when we're having a conversation with someone or in the group, actually being with them out there. So it means actually listening. And this comes back to point number 4, is what is needed in the moment, right? The group doesn't need me to worry about myself constantly. The group needs me to participate and show up and be present. And yes, express my fears, and if I'm intimidated, so that I get them out in the open and I'm not resisting them. So I think that's important as well. And then as far as making it more nurturing, I think that I definitely think that choosing the people you paddle with is super important, and being very discerning with that. I don't recommend just paddling with anyone. I recommend paddling with people who are focused on the group. You know, I hear so many times women who paddle with their boyfriends or husbands, and they have terrible time, and it's because, and these are women who have come to me, that's why I say it could be the opposite. It could be a guy going out with their wife who's a really experienced boater. What I'm trying to say is that when an experienced boater is going out and inviting people to come with them, but they're more focused on doing their thing and getting their fix in, then you're not on the same page. You haven't communicated clearly. You don't have the same goals. And when that happens, then you're not setting yourself up for success. So actually having clear communication of like what the goals are, it doesn't mean you have to be at the put in, okay, what are our goals? But you know, when you're talking, hey, do you want to go paddling today? Yeah, but I'm feeling like I really want to do class 2 today. That's all I want to do. Would you be up for that? I'm feeling a little nervous. Then you put it out there and they'll be like, oh yeah, no worries. I'm stoked. Or they might say, oh, I really wanted to go do this other run that's class 3. And then you might say, okay, well, that's not for me today. Instead of you going anyway or not communicating at all. Or someone might say, they might have the idea that they're going to play every wave and you don't have that much time, or you don't want to play every wave, like you want to run the rapids. So having some communication with that is important. And that's why, of course, groups like Cali Collective, right? Groups like the trips that I put on, the trips that Melissa and I put on together, that's why they're so powerful, is because, or I feel this way, because the goal is to have fun and to create an atmosphere, an environment where everyone can thrive, right, in their uniqueness. And so was that helpful? Did that answer your question, Gail? I feel like I went off on some.
That was super powerful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was perfect. You know, and it's, you know, and at the end of the day, that's exactly why I know I'm doing what I'm doing, what you do is, you know, I was that person when I was new into kayaking, and I didn't really communicate my goals or my feelings because I just wanted to go so bad. And if somebody invited me, I would say yes and do everything in my power to just try to keep up and be on their program. And I never, you know, and I took a lot of beat downs and I ended up in a lot of places I probably shouldn't have been, but it was, you know, and I take, you know, the onus for that, not just, oh, these guys were dragging me down stuff that I shouldn't have been on. I also didn't communicate and been like, yeah, you know, I'm actually, hey, this is my first season kayaking. I probably shouldn't be on class 5, but I didn't. So it is a two-way street, and you have to communicate, you know, and you have to be honest, you know. So for a long time it was like, oh, well, they just took me down all this stuff. But, you know, as time goes on and you grow up a little bit, you're like, well, I suppose I could have said something. But, you know, as the world turns. All right, who do we have next? How about Emma Johnson? Emma's got a question about your Galway trip.
Hey, Anna.
Hey.
I was just wondering, what do you think would have happened if your friend hadn't paddled up to you in the eddy on the Gully? I think that so often I rely on my other friends to help me get through difficult situations, and wondering how you would have navigated that if you had been alone.
Yeah, I would have paddled out the slot eventually. I was working up to it when Brian came around, because or I would have found a spot on shore and like pulled my boat up and walked around to where I could see how to get back in. I would have eventually taken action. Now, back then, I was more paralyzed. Now grown in wisdom, I feel like. It doesn't always show up for sure, but you know, now I'm pretty good at taking action of looking and being like, okay, well, I need to do something here. So something had to have happened. I couldn't stay in the eddy until nightfall and spent the night in the cauldron. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's my question is about the reinforcement of needing to rely on other people to help you through these difficult experiences versus finding something within yourself that gets you out of the eddy. And if maybe the next moment you found yourself in that eddy, like, did you really not want to be alone and like have someone help you through it? Or were you able to find that thing in yourself and get yourself out of the situation?
Yeah. I think that, again, it depends on what the moment is requiring. So there's nothing wrong with receiving coaching and guidance, right? It's super helpful. And when that shows up in your life at the right moment, awesome, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And it's also important to train ourselves to do things to find that inside of ourselves. And I feel like one of the best ways as far as whitewater kayaking is to start going first. Start leading on rivers that you know, going first, going without safety already set, on as long as you feel comfortable, okay, on rivers that you know. And that to me is one of the best confidence builders. And also what builds confidence is, you know, getting yourself unstuck. So if you get stuck on a rock or something and, you know, start to work yourself off on your own, you know, as long as you're stable, it always is situation dependent. But I think leading is one of the best things you can do. And then that builds. And again, it's consistent action over time. So, you know, doing it just once and being like, woohoo, I led, yay, and I'm never going to do that again. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But what I hear you say is you want to find that power inside of you. So that's going to require work and consistent action and consistently putting yourself into uncomfortable situations. So, and you can do it. You got it. Baby steps. You don't have to like do everything perfectly. And that's the other thing that I find. I don't know if it's a gender thing, it seems to be, but I feel like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as women to be perfect and to not actually, I think this was in Gail's question also, to not make mistakes. And that is a huge story that's full of BS for sure. Because to be human is to err is to be human. I mean, we grow when we make mistakes, right? Mistakes. Failures. You could also just look at those as experiences that didn't work out the way you thought they were going to work out. Failure is a story, a complete story. Mistake is a complete story when you really break it down. They're simply experiences. You get to decide what you're going to take from that experience and how you're going to define that experience. And so that's the other thing I would recommend for you finding your power is the next time that you start beating yourself up about something, a situation, is to pause and say, I'm feeling disempowered right now. Can I change the context? How do I want to feel about this? Because if you're going to create a story, you may as well create an empowering story, right? So that's what I'd say.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Jeannie. Jeannie has a question that sort of piggybacks onto this last one.
Sure.
Hi, I was just wondering, other than hindsight telling you, you know, after the fact, how do you really know whether the fear you're feeling is the fear that, you know, your body is creating to genuinely keep you alive versus like it's just a story that you're telling yourself?
Mm. Self-awareness and practice is what I would say. Practice, self-awareness, what I mean by that is really getting to know yourself by paying attention to what your habit patterns are. How you approach stand-up paddleboarding is how you approach life. How you approach life is how you approach stand-up paddleboarding, right? It's not like you become, I mean, yeah, we can say we become completely different people when we're on the river because we love it. But truly, we confront challenges in patterns throughout our lives. And so start paying attention when you feel fearful, not just on the river, but just in general in life, and start getting curious. Get curious. Why am I feeling this way? What's really going on here? What is really happening? Right? So it's a practice. And the more self-aware, the more you can start to recognize your own patterns, then the more you can recognize the stories. You know, to a certain extent, the fear, no matter regardless, is always real, right? It's a challenge, it's scary, it's new, the brain, it's new, it's not familiar. So it's not like the fear, I'm not saying that fear is not real and it's not truly felt. What I'm saying is that if the choice to let it overwhelm, to let it overwhelm us is a choice. And that's where the fact versus story comes in. So it takes practice, And self-awareness is the most powerful thing. It's not thing. Self-awareness is the most powerful thing you can cultivate in your life. Self-awareness is more powerful than any amount of money or title or job or however you define yourself, because self-awareness allows you to decide how you want to live your life. You get to choose, right? Because you know yourself. You know your body type. In Ayurveda, we say this, you know your constitution, therefore you know what to eat. You know how to tailor your lifestyle so that you're healthier, right? In yoga, it's important to have self-awareness so that you know how your body's feeling. Yeah, in kayaking, it's important to have self-awareness for mindset, right? And also for what skill level you're at and what really works for you. So does that answer your question, Jeannie?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks so much, Jeannie. Great question. Okay, Jessie Jewell. All right. Jessie, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm loving these Zoom calls, I guess, or whatever they get it, Zoom classes. I would say one of my challenges is I am very comfortable going to my home river. So I go to the Potomac like probably once every 3 days. But one of my fear challenges is going to other rivers. So since I'm like near the Potomac, I built up in my head for like certain rivers like the Upper Yak, which I finally did, and everything went well, but I had so much trouble in my head of fear about this one section, about this river before I even did it. So it's like a lot of times it's misjudging my skill set and like what I'm capable of and like the potential consequences of it. So that's one of my challenges.
Yeah, I hear that. Congrats on doing the Upper Yak. I love that river. So fun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, for one thing, the whitewater culture is strewn with war stories all over the place about rivers, way too built up. So that's one thing. And that's how it is. This is a sidebar, but what I recommend to anyone in this group is, even though I told two tonight, but they had a purpose. They had an empowering purpose versus just like, oh, you should have seen me. I did this thing. It was so scary, so sketchy, dude. Okay. Is we've got to stop telling these stories in disempowering ways. Like, we've got to stop telling horror stories and like, oh yeah, dude, it was crazy. You know, I almost died. And just what I feel like that comes from is a place of ego. Okay. When there's actually no purpose to telling the story except to, like, you know, exchange stories. So there's a time and a place for that for sure. But I think that the first time I ran the Upper Gauley, I thought I was going to die because it had been so built up, and I was terrified. And then I realized when I was paddling down, I was like, oh my gosh, I can totally do this. So that's a little thing about whitewater culture. I think it's good for us all to be more aware of how we're talking about it. And then to your point, so rivers, this is what I like to tell my students. Rivers are made up of rocks and downstream bees and holes and waves and features, and they're all the same except that they're all in different patterns depending on the rapid in the river, right? So looking at it as the facts, like, okay, I'm going to do a new river. I know there's going to be V's. I know there's going to be boofs. I know that there's going to be rocks and drops, right? And just because they're arranged in a certain way that people have really built up does not mean that it's super scary. So being like, yeah, you know, I can paddle downstream V's. I can boof left. I can boof right. I can boof down the center. I've boofed, right? I can take strokes. I can look where I want to go, right? Keeping, again, it's the separating fact from story. And then, because I can relate to that, feeling scared going to a different river. And so a lot of times I just don't resist it. And I also go with people who are willing to show me or take their time, right? Or I'm with a group who's willing to take the time to run it in a way that's, you know, not just bombing downstream. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jesse, but it's
yeah,
really,
that helps a lot. That
good.
helps a lot, because I definitely will say I build it up in my head more than it actually needs to be. Another kayaker friend is like, you might know him as like Bobby Miller.
Yeah.
He's the one that took me down to the upper, like kind of almost dragging me up there. But once I got there, it was like completely fine. And you are right. I think a lot of people tend to say the horror stories of specific rivers, then like, you know, and that kind of builds in my head a little bit. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, the war stories. Nothing like driving to the put-in of something that you're really nervous on, and the whole way down, everyone's just telling stories of people swimming through sieves.
Yeah.
By the time we got halfway down, I'm like, everyone needs to stop. Just stop. All right, Barbara, you're up.
Hello. I was wondering, because I tried to, I realized I work in a setting where I'd make other people feel safe, but I'm not really sure how to make myself feel safe. If I'm trying to push limits, I always worry about being a drag, needing help, you know, by the end of the day, running out of juice. A lot of times the people I'm going out with, it's like they have a trip they've put out there that'll be like 10 or 12 miles, which I can do. But then as they're talking about it, it's like, and then we'll go to this island and that island, and then we're going to be surfing, and that leaves me out because I can't extend it another 10 miles. I don't have that oomph. So again, I feel like even some of the advertised trips leave me with that question about how to not be a drag on it. I feel like, you know, if I'm going to come along and they've been kayaking for 30 years and I've been doing it for a few years, I don't roll, you know, I mean, there's a lot of that. I worry about being a drag.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so is your question on how to manage that?
Thinking about that, like, how can I make myself feel more safe? I do think that, you know, maybe I should just be listening to what you're saying. I should say to people, I'd like to come, but 12 miles is my max.
Mm-hmm.
Am I welcome? Is that what should I be doing? You
Yeah.
know, I want to have, I like to go and pay people take instruction because I know they'll make sure I come back. I have gone on trips where I've been left behind in the shipping lane and no one is answering the radio or whatever. You know, it's happened to me once or twice where I thought it could have been bad.
Right.
But, you know, I plan to survive any trip I go on.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, absolutely. Communication ahead of time. There is nothing wrong with you sending an email, you know, and saying, hey, this is where I'm at. This is my skill level. This is what I'm comfortable with. Can I come on this trip? Are you okay with me being on this trip? And then what's important, and this is another aspect, is don't take anything personally. Don't take it personally if they're like, well, this trip is for people who can serve, blah, blah, whatever they say. Just, you know, there's nothing personal there, right? It's just that that's what the trip is for. And you asked a question and they're communicating. And so I think that piece is important. And then, you know, be grateful. Okay, great. Now I know. And then if you really want to go on that trip, then you want to train, right? To get yourself in better fitness mindset so that you can go with that particular group. If that's what you really want to do. I advocate for sure, if you were left behind, I don't know that I'd go with that group again. Or I would definitely have a conversation with them. And this is the piece about being vulnerable too, is advocating for ourselves. Advocating for ourselves is so important, right? And that is scary. That is courageous. Advocating, hey, this isn't working for me, or I just got left behind and that didn't work for me. I felt vulnerable. I felt like I wasn't being paid attention to, whatever. I feel like that wasn't safe. So can we have a conversation about that? Now, if you go up to them and are mad and are just accusing someone of something, that conversation isn't going to go so well, right? So it's really about coming to them and saying, hey, this is how I felt. This didn't work for me. And if they're not willing to have a conversation with you, that's a big, big red flag, in my opinion, right? As far as who I would want to go out with. I'm very picky about people that I go out with. You know, tons of people paddle here in the Southeast. I don't paddle with just anyone because I like to be on the same page with the people that I paddle with. So I think from what I'm hearing, to make yourself feel safer is communicate, advocate for yourself. And then if you really want to do some harder stuff, like if that's truly your goal, then train for it, right? And find the people that do work for you. Did that answer your question, Barbara?
Thank you. Plus, I have to say, a number of the people who are always pushing risks seem to be injured and out of commission for a year or two now and then. So I take my pushers with a grain of salt.
Sure.
In their arms in a sling.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing is that I think it's important that some people, that's their passion, is to push themselves. It's their passion. And sometimes you get hurt, and that's okay. That is their choice. The only thing we can control is ourselves, and that's what we need to focus on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks so much, Barbara. Okay, who do we have next? Katie. Katie, you're up.
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, my question, I think you've given really great tools for how to manage your own fear. My question is for the friends that I have that are struggling the most. I feel like there's lots of moments where I'm feeling like ready to go and I just want to get it over with. And I have friends that are so capable and they're really, really skilled, but they just get this debilitating fear and they kind of slow down. And so there's this struggle of like, I just want to go, but I also want to try to be supportive. And so do you have any like practical tools for that kind of like dynamic of when you're not on the same page with the fear scale, but you still want to be supportive and not be a jerk?
Yeah, so great question. So it comes down to what I think I hear you saying is that you want to paddle with people who are better than you a little bit more. And so I would, and you want to be supportive of your friends who are not charging as hard due to fear. And so I would say balance it for yourself, first of all. Like, it's okay for you to paddle with other people and, and get that for yourself. And when you're, so that when you're paddling with your friends who are more tentative, you can really be with them, because you don't feel like they're holding you back, because you're also taking care of yourself and paddling with some other folks and challenging yourself, right? So then when you're paddling with them, you can be with them. Whereas if you're trying to, go faster and challenge yourself, and the others aren't ready, and they're also not ready to support you in like you going a little faster maybe, or not needing to talk through a rapid, then that's going to get that is frustrating for you. And you feel like you're maybe not progressing as much as you'd like. Am I understand? Is that true? Or?
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. Yeah, I think that I need to be able to broaden my groups for a while. Like these were my people, and so I was like, well, I'm gonna make it work because these are my people. But I think you have a really good point that there's times for different kinds of groups too. So I should think of that. Yeah, and also communicate with them and advocate, like I was saying to Barbara, say, hey, I'd really like to go a little faster, or I don't want to, we've done this rapid a ton. You know the line, I know the line. I don't think we need to scout. I don't even think we need to talk about it. How about we all challenge ourselves to just run it? Or are you okay? I'm just gonna go and I'll wait for you at the bottom. Mm-hmm. These are just ideas. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Katie. Okay. Ooh. All right, Rebecca, let me find you. Rebecca's got a couple questions for you. Okay, you're on.
Hi. So I wrote these in a different order in the chat, but it flows better to do the second one first.
Okay.
So I'm an outdoor leader, and I'm kind of asking the same question that Katie asked, but like the opposite way. So as an outdoor leader, how do you work with individuals and students who tend to have less fear and push themselves harder, to a point of like, you're not sure how to manage the risk if they were pushing themselves harder? So how do you like talk about that and phrase things?
Great question. So what I like to do is lay out what is. So for instance, if I know that there's a rapid that that has some consequence, and I know that someone in the group, well, first of all, it's important to set them up by giving them good feedback throughout, right? So giving them good feedback and communicate with them throughout so they're aware of where they're at. Not because you told them, but when they are like not making lines, or they're flipping over and they're rolling but barely, that you are saying, hey, you're really lifting your head and it's really hindering your roll and you're not, so try this, giving them solutions. Or what I notice is every time you miss a line, your angle isn't really on target, and take that stern draw with more core, right? So you can really hold it. And but I really see you struggling with that, so keep working on that. So then if there's a rapid that requires one of those two things or both, I'll say, okay, I speak to the group. I always address the group. This rapid requires that you maintain, that you be really good and solid at maintaining your angle 95% of the times. So if you've been able to do that on this trip 95% of the time so far, then you're probably good to go on this rapid. If not, you just want to give some consideration to that. If you blow this angle, right, the consequences are that you can flip and maybe hit your head. It's really rocky, or it'll turn your boat and you'll surf a hole or whatever it is, right? And so that you've already been giving them feedback and they're aware. You've helped them grow their self-awareness to where they make the call. And in my experience, it's been very rare. Sometimes it happens that people will make the call to run it. Mm-hmm. And in that case, unless it's like super, like, no way. Mm-hmm. In that case, I usually let them do it only if I feel confident that they know the consequences. This is key. So in Creek Week, I teach a class 4, a women's Creek Week every spring. Unfortunately, I had to cancel, or we rescheduled this year, and we run the last 5 rapids of the Narrows of the Green in the run out. So it's the class 4 section. And there's a toilet bowl and hammer factor, and they're back to back. And so the 2 of them together is definitely class 4 plus, I would say. And what I tell people is, if you're going to run toilet bowl, then you're committing to hammer factor, and there's nothing I can do for you if you flip between the 2. There's nothing I can do. And I make it very clear, like that, even though I'm there for safety, if you choose to do this, you know, I'll be sitting there in the eddy, but whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and you're going to wash out the bottom. So are you okay going over hammer factor upside down? And I don't do this to scare them. I don't actually say that, are you okay going? They know, they see it. They know that it's a shallow slide, right? And so by painting it in that picture, it allows folks to make their own decisions. And sometimes I also honor, because there's been times when I'm like, ooh, that person has decided to go and I am scared now, and then they do it and they surprise me. And sometimes it's important to not take that away from people, that there's something inside of them, right? Now, there's always risk management. So it's important to only do that if you feel comfortable. If there was a time, I've definitely told folks, like, yeah, we're not running this river because it's too high, or we're not doing this rapid, we're all walking. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I had another question on a different topic. How would you recommend like finding people to paddle with that are that type of supportive that you want, especially like when you're moving to a different place in the country and during this pandemic? Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you're doing? You're moving?
Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, I might be moving to Utah from the Southeast.
Gotcha. So I think the Facebook groups have become really powerful recently, and there's a Ladies of Whitewater Facebook group. I don't know if you're part of that. There's many like women's whitewater Facebook groups, and that's a really great place to start. I've actually, I seem to have worked with a lot of the women in these groups, and they're very supportive, and some of them are, they're great. I don't know everyone because they're pretty big groups, but that's a good place to start and just put yourself out there. Some folks like taking instruction, going on a trip, an all women's trip. Also some in my experience, some of the ladies who have come on some of my trips, they've then been like made friends and they've paddled with each other all over the world. It's really impressive. So searching out the type of groups you want to be with, and sometimes, it could be like a instruction or guidance group at first, and that's great because you'll meet people. And then I think the Facebook groups are great for meetups too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I've definitely had that happen a lot since we started, where women have met, or now that we do all gender classes, people have met and they go from clinic to clinic to trip, and one of the coolest success stories was these two women met at a clinic, and then they went to a few more together. And then last year, the year before last, one of them was the officiant, and the other one's wedding. And it was like,
That's cool.
this
Very
is
cool.
so cool. All right, so we got one more question from David.
Hey, Anna.
Hey.
I wanted to follow up on a question that was asked earlier about supporting friends that might let the stories overwhelm their decision making. And besides being open to whatever decision they are going to make, is there anything else that one could do? And then the other one is, do you feel like there's more effective ways to try to encourage them or motivate them, especially based on gender? Like, do women prefer one kind of motivation versus men, or what's your advice on that, if any?
Yeah, so first of all, always remember, I'll come back to what I've said a few times tonight, is we can only control ourselves. So in that vein, really get to know like why. So be with the people, be with your friends. And what I mean by really be present with them. What do they want? What are their goals, right? What are they telling you? What are they not telling you, right? So really be with them. That is the most powerful thing you can do to encourage and support someone. We all want to feel heard, right? If someone says, I'm really nervous about this, most people will just be like, oh, you got it. If you say that to someone, you haven't actually heard them. You're just saying what you think without even actually being present with them, right? Something more effective would be, I hear you, right? I hear that you're nervous. I get nervous too. Here's what helps me. I don't know if this will help you, but here's what helps me. This is how I think about it. But dismissing someone just because you want to move on, or because you know, you might know that they can do it, but that doesn't make a difference for them, right? Unless you're actually present with them and hear them and validate their experience. So that's really key. And that just means good listening, right? And giving them the space to communicate and advocate for themselves. If they, you know, sometimes all it takes is, hey, I'm nervous. And you say, I really hear that. What makes you nervous, right? Get curious. What makes you nervous? What are you worried about on this rapid? Let's talk about it, right? And sometimes talking it through, and then they've talked it through, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, I'm good to go. And as far as the question about gender, and like there's a full gender spectrum, of course. Most of my experiences with women teaching, and I've done some research, and women, according to some research, have a different, it's not a different stress response. We all have fight or flight, but the hormone oxytocin suppresses fight or flight in women, or it can. And they've coined a term called tend and befriend. And the tending part is, or the befriending part is what's really important, is that women throughout history, throughout our evolution, a threat to women generalized would be a male known or unknown. And one-on-one with a threat from a male, a woman is much more vulnerable. But in a group, there's a lot more power and protection. And so having that group support of other women, some scientists say that, or they feel like their research shows, or their research does show, that women paddling with other women or being in stressful situations with other women is helpful in and of itself, because we're wired to have that as a defense mechanism. Okay, so what that translates is that if it's all genders, and or there's only one woman in the group, is making sure that there is the support. What I said, be present, hear them. You know, men tend to be, in general, a big gender difference is men tend to be fixers. They want to fix things. If someone is having an emotional breakdown on the river, they want to fix it. There was a race once that I raced. It was on the Russell Fork a really long time ago. And the race didn't start until a little bit further down the river at that point. And I swam because I got surfed in a hole. And I was so mad and frustrated. I was burnt out on competing. There was a lot going on. I pulled my boat over. I ran up into the woods and I bawled my eyes out, like bawled, like sobbing. I came back after a few minutes of doing that, got in my boat, raced, and I won the race. So like getting emotional on the river, to me, and not everyone agrees with me, and that's okay. It's just water coming out of your eyes. It's simply a processing. It's an emotional response to something that's going on. Again, fact versus story. Getting emotional on the river isn't weak. Whatever, that's a story. We can make it mean whatever, but if we can just stick to the fact, men a lot of times make it mean I need to fix this. I mean, men cry in the river too, so it's not a gender thing. Whatever emotion it is, whatever gender, that recognizing, it's the same with fear. It's a response, and let's separate fact from story, and let's not try and fix everything. So don't try and fix your friends. Be present with them. Let them advocate for themselves. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to fix about you. There's nothing to fix about me. There's nothing to fix about anyone on this call, right? We're all great and doing the best we can with the level of awareness and skill that we have. That's all.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks so much, David. All right. Well, that is going to wrap up our question and answer session for this webinar. Anna, do you have any parting remarks for our folks today?
I would say thank you very much for being here. And again, consistency over time is what's going to make a difference. And yeah, I would say if any of you want more of like the mindset, I offer mindset coaching along with health coaching. And I love to coach. So as you can tell by tonight's call. So you can visit my website, mindbodypaddle.com, and check out what I offer there. And then also for the ladies, sorry, Jesse and David, but for the ladies, I have a Facebook group called Courage, Confidence, and Wellness with Anna. And you can join that group on Facebook. It's a private group. You answer 2 questions to get automatically in. They ask, it's about your superpowers. You have to name your superpowers if you want to join the group. So I'd love to see you there. If you have any questions, please follow up on an email. And thank you. And I really appreciate all the questions. And thanks, Melissa.
Awesome. Thank you again, Anna. Gail just asked, the Facebook name it's Courage.
Yeah,
Say it
I'll
again.
type it in.
I'm on it. I just
Courage. No,
put
okay,
it in the chat. Yeah.
And wellness. Hold on. Did I just write 3 S's? Wellness with Anna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Anna, for that. That was just beautiful. And I think that we all got a whole lot out of that. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you for attending these webinars just in general. This has been, talk about facing fear. This has been really challenging for me. I don't like the camera. I can speak in front of a group of 500 people. I can teach on the river. I can run big waterfalls in class 5. You put a camera in front of me, and it is utterly terrifying. And so I have done this now 12 times. So, and we all experience fear in one way or another. And like Anna was saying, it is a practice. And a very, very dear friend of mine, Hendry, who was very integral in my beginning days in kayaking, he used to tell me that it's, you never get over the fear. It's not the fear that changes. It's not the fear that changes. It's your ability to fight it.
Oh.
And the more that you practice fighting fears, the more capable you are of fighting bigger fears, and on and on and on. And so, you know, over time, you know, if you practice fighting small things and you keep stepping up to things that, you know, they could be small things. Like, I don't like being in front of the camera. It would have been very easy for me to pass off hosting to somebody else. Oh, I have this other friend who's really good at that. But for me, it was facing up to that fear and taking that courageous action and being like, okay, this is my one scary thing that I'm going to do today. And then I'm going to do, oh, then I'll do it once a week. No, actually, we're going to do it 4 times a week. So, you know, keep practicing and keep the faith, and be true to yourself and be honest with yourself. And please come back and see us again. We have webinars scheduled through the middle of June, and then we're going to sort of reassess what happens with shelter in place and states reopening, and all of us getting to hopefully get back on the water and teach you guys in person. So we're going to reassess probably in the beginning of June on how these webinars are going to continue. We are going to continue them. I said that a few webinars ago, and I got a bunch of frantic emails of people saying, please don't stop. We are going to keep these going. They might not be 4 days a week, but we are going to keep them going, because the amount of topics that we have ready to go from this incredible array of just utterly badass instructors, coaches, paddlers is outstanding. So we want to get to them all. So what do we have next?
Can I say one thing before you say what's next? Sorry.
Please.
Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge you, Melissa, for what you said about having courage. And what this is perfect example of, so you had courage, you put yourself out there, you don't like the camera, you're doing this series, and look at how many people you're affecting, you're impacting. And that is an inspiration, right? For all of us, I'd love for all of you to take this away, is that when you put yourself out there and you're vulnerable, you're better able to be of service to others. And that is awesome. And the last thing is, I forgot my last slide, so this is what you're going for. Instead of false evidence appearing real, face everything and rise. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. We'll have them. So now we're going to have a couple of sort of just a little, we have a little special edition thing, and we're going to be talking a bit about family. So, and those are going to be actually at 9 a.m. Pacific time, because we are, well, I know you're on the East Coast, and thank you for staying up late all the way till like 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock to do these. I go to sleep early, so I get it. Emily Jackson is coming on Tuesday, and she's going to be talking about balancing family, work, and still figuring out how to get there and paddle. Then we go back to another technique based. We have Sammy Hawkins, who is going to talk about making your S tones nice and snappy. So it's really been really fun peppering in some technique and mental strategy and all these other things. So the technique ones are really fun. And so come and tune in for that. What else? We're going to have Lauren McGaw's back. Natalie Anderson is going to be talking about finding your role. And then we're back, and then we're shooting all the way over to Norway. And Marianne Sutter is going to give back-to-back talks. One is going to be on the boot stroke, and then she's going to follow that up with being pregnant and kayaking and how to manage that. So it's going to go on and on. We got about 10 more until the middle of June. So please come back and see us. If everyone wants, and Gail asked if Cali Collective was going to do our weekends this year. If all goes well, the date that I'm being told is the beginning of June. Fingers crossed. We're in phase 3 of California's reopening. So right now we're hoping that our first clinic is going to be our holistic paddling clinic on the Rogue in the middle of June, and then hopefully we'll be swinging right into our clinics on the South Fork. And so, yeah, if all goes well, we'll be on the water, and we'll be there with you. But anyways, thanks again, Anna. Thank you so much. And if everyone just wants to hang in there for 1 second when we sign off, because I'm going to put up some credits, and it's going to have all of Anna's information. You will get this webinar in an email. You'll get a link to watch it. If you have friends that missed it, we are offering, or if there's something else that you missed, we're offering all of our archives on our e-store. So go ahead, go through it. They're only $5. You can watch everything that we've done so far. You can even, throw in a t-shirt or something like that. But anyways, thanks so much. Please come and see us again. We love you all. Be safe out there. Have fun. And hopefully soon we will be on the water.
Ew. That's a nice graphic.